So today I'm Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and our team is here to help people who are going into the criminal justice system work towards the best possible outcome. So sometimes everybody that's coming in is fine. There'll probably be people joining later. Typically what we do on these webinars is I present and other people offer. Sometimes my partner, Justin, has something to present. Sometimes members of the community have something to share, and we try to get that information all because I really believe there's a message for everybody in all of this information. So some of you know my partner, some of you don't. You know, most people know Sam. You might raise your hand, Sam, so they know who you are. You may have spoken to him over the phone. Others know my other partner, Justin, who I see he's on his iPhone there. Justin, wave your hand in case people don't know who you are. And I'm Michael, and we've got a few other members of our community, and new members are joining us all the time. One thing that we have in common is that all of us have gone through what you're going through, and we're very passionate about wanting to give you good information that you could use to make better decisions. And so that's where I wanted to start, because we had a great experience from one of our community members. And Joseph, if you're willing, I would really welcome you to share your story of what happened with you, and that will kind of tee us up on the rest of today's webinar and what we're doing and what I want to share. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Joseph, and tell your story.
Morning, everybody. My name is Joseph. I've been sentenced. I got sentenced this Wednesday in Brooklyn Federal Court. My range was 41 to 51 months, and the judge gave me a year and a day. My attorney asked for—
Joseph, you said you start off in the back, because this is what really great self-advocacy looks like. You started off and you heard that you were the subject of a challenge, and walk them through that whole process of what you did, because your advocacy doesn't end right now. Although you got a great outcome, you got to now we've got something, we just got a lower threshold that we got to start from. But how did it start?
I got a call from the FTC in May of 2021. They wanted to talk to me. They scheduled an appointment for a few days after the phone call. The same day I called Justin. Justin helped me retain my attorney as well. And I came forward right away, accepting responsibility. I didn't waste any time. I told him what I did, how I did it. And when I hired Justin, he told me, this is going to require you to do a lot of work, and again, I'm still working on it. I mean, it's been a year and a half, and I was constantly working on this every day. I have 3 binders full of work that I did in this last year and a half. Notes, everything that I listened to. I saw all your calls, all the YouTube videos, the calls with Sam, Justin, Larry, Brad. I mean, the whole team. I couldn't have done it with just an attorney. Justin prepped me for my PSR. I stood on the phone for 1 hour and 40 minutes when my attorney just said, oh, it's a 10, 20-minute phone call, the PSR. They're just going to know about your upbringing, and that's it. And I actually held the probation officer on the phone for almost 2 hours because I wanted to get everything out in the open to have as much information on me. Then my plea came in late December of 2021. I signed it. I pled guilty on March 1st of this year. I posted bond, and then I originally had a sentencing on June 28th, got it delayed to September 14th. But in the interim, I was working, Justin stressed the working, and I agree with him, just humbling myself, going from a really good paying salary to $13 an hour on a golf course and working for Amazon on the night shift. I'm completely humbled by this experience, but the judge actually at sentencing mentioned the work. She recited part of my narrative. She recited parts of my character reference letters. She recited the prison professor video that I did with you, Michael. And she, I also did a couple of extra courses on the side. Brian Hamilton and Mates to Entrepreneurs class, I did that. And I, worked at a soup kitchen. I spoke at detox centers, very active in AA, attending 7-8 meetings a week, 3 in person, 4 or 5 Zooms. And just was nonstop work. I mean, hiring you guys, if someone thinks they're just going to hire, Justin and the team, and it's going to be a magic bullet, it's a tremendous amount of work that you got to put in, and the work paid off. I remember my wife was telling me at 2 a.m, I'm sitting on my desk, I'm preparing for this, preparing for the PSR, doing work. She's like, what is this? I said, babe, it's going to pay off. Just let me be. It's going to pay off. It did. I'm very fortunate. Now I got clarity. The worst was this last year and a half. I was up all night, wondering, how long I'm going to get, where I'm going to go.
Well, Joseph, the thing is that you really did that to get you here. And now you started with the fear of 40 months or 50 months. And now you found clarity. You did all the work. As you said, you did the work and you got down to 12 months in a day. But that's not it. Now that you have 12 months in a day, the job continues. It says, okay, now I've got to go in there and I've got to do whatever I can to get out early. And after, I know that Justin's got something to share. I know that Scott has some things to share. After that, I want to show you what happens next. Because the advocacy, the self-advocacy work, it never ends until you're on the other side of the journey, until you've gotten through prison, through supervised release, and you know that you've done everything possible to get home to your family at the soonest possible time with the highest level of liberty. And just as you were successful in navigating your way to a year and a day from a potential sentence of 4 or 5 years, I believe you can be just as influential in getting out at the soonest possible time. And that's what I want to share after we hear, I think it was Justin said he wanted to share something.
Thank you. Can you hear me well, Michael?
Yeah.
Thank you. So a couple of days ago, I was in Northern California and I received a frantic phone call from someone who was released from the camp in Sheridan, and he went to the halfway house in Hollywood where I served a few months. And he was frustrated because the halfway house employee and his probation officer was requiring him to work. And he said, look, I'm older, I'm retired, I don't want to have to work, I have some resources, and they were really pushing him to work. And when I asked him what he did while in prison to try to influence his case manager or someone with whom he would meet, Michael frequently states in these webinars, you are trying to influence people you will meet and people you may never meet. And when I interviewed him, he had, or spoke with him, it was this fixation of just wanting to get out of prison early. And I too had that fixation. I know all of you want to get out as quickly as possible, but now he sounds like so many people who say, I wish I just finished my time in the minimum security camp. It was easier. This place is smaller. They're requiring me to look for work, a minimum wage job. I'm retired. I don't want to do that. So I'm not telling you that had he influenced all of these people in a better way, it would have gotten him the outcome he wanted. But I think it would have advanced his agenda because he and his family are incredibly frustrated. So some takeaways: if you're retired, or even if you think you have a job lined up, I encourage you to have several jobs lined up, because a job that I had in the halfway house fell through. So what does that mean? While you're in prison, besides fixating on trying to get out as early as you can, really work to influence people you're going to meet weeks, months, and years down the road. And that's a conversation I had with Michael in prison when I said, I'm going to return to this career. And he said, well, walk me through that. What if that doesn't work out? What will you do? And I said, I don't know. So he said, well, to the extent that you can influence that process. So that started with writing letters to probation officers. So while you're in prison and you're going through this post-sentencing process, and you all want to get out of prison early. If you get what you want, I don't, or we don't want you to have a tougher experience in the halfway house or on federal probation. And that really starts with what you're doing now, but also while you're in prison. Now, there are people in prison who told me that I was crazy for doing this, that the probation officer would never get or read this letter. And of course, I shared that with Michael. And he said, maybe the probation officer doesn't get it, but you can certainly make a copy of it with the commissary copy card you purchased. And if the probation officer didn't get your letters, when you meet him or her in the halfway house, you can provide him with a copy of the letters. In my case, Isaiah Murrow, the probation officer, did receive them. He asked some questions about what I was going to do, which was odd because I covered that in the letters, and it told me maybe he read portions of them or none of them, but I knew that he had them. And if he didn't read them, I know that he did after we met. So I mentioned this fixation of wanting to get out of prison because I've spoken with many of you individually, and I was you, but it's not just getting out early, it's making sure the journey on the other side is easier as well. So if you have a career that you want to return to, I know Michael has interviewed a subject matter expert that discussed, can you be an entrepreneur while in the halfway house or on probation or run your own business? All of that will be easier if you are sharing this release plan with people who are going to judge you weeks and months and years down the road. And now this person in the halfway house really regrets how he served time in prison. He's like, I'm just so angry that I didn't know this. These people are not taking my word for it. Why? He has nothing to show them. So many of you going through this process can look back with a sense of regret. I wish I knew this then, or I would have done this differently, or I would have hired a different lawyer. We don't want you to have any of that regret moving forward. Those days should end, and that's part of the reason we're on these calls. So we're going to continue to discuss these themes of what you're doing in prison, how that will influence probation, halfway house in the years to come. And we share these cautionary tales because you can learn as much from the good and bad. So should you have questions about your reentry plan or how you can influence people down the road, it's why we're here. And we want to help you go through that process. That's what I wanted to convey, Michael, and thanks for letting me contribute.
So I took notes while Justin was talking of things that I hear, and all of you were on the same call, and maybe some of you have questions as well. And if you do, please just raise your hand, or you could put it in the chat if you don't want to raise your hand. But I'm very flexible and very open to listening to a question. But I sometimes feel that if you don't even know the journey ahead, you don't even know what questions to ask. So when Justin said, for example, he spoke with a guy who was in prison and he went to the halfway house, and the guy said he didn't want to be there. He wishes he stayed in prison. For me, that prompts a question, because that is an initial reaction to being there. But I know that Scott, he's going to tell us about, he had that same feeling at one point, and now he's on home confinement. It's probably has a different perspective. And so, Scott, I'm going to ask you to reveal that after I respond to a couple of these other notes that I have here. So the real key here is to understand there's always an opportunity cost. Every time I take a decision, there's an opportunity cost that comes with it. When Justin said other people in prison are judging you and saying, don't do this or don't do that or what you should do, the real person that matters is you. Every person on this webinar has to really define success. What is it? None of us can change the past. There's nobody on our team that can undo what a federal judge has done. Nobody. There's the law, which we know, which provides you with a certain amount of statutory good time. There is the other laws that exist, like the First Step Act, that can advance your release date. There are other programs in prison that can advance your release date, but I can't change whether you're going to qualify for that or not. Earlier on this call, we were listening to some member of our community was talking about a judge recommended a specific prison in the Bureau or state in the Bureau of Prisons sent that person to one prison, but it's not in proximity to their home. So there's always going to be these kind of complications going forward, meaning there's always going to be saying, I didn't think about that before. If we would have had an opportunity to speak with this person before he was sentenced, like we did Joseph, I'm very confident they would have had a different outcome, because there are things that an individual can do that the lawyer can't do. That doesn't stop at sentencing. That continues in prison. That continues in the halfway house. It all starts by figuring out what is the goal. And if the goal is to say, I just want to get out of prison as soon as I possibly can, it doesn't matter that you might have to endure a couple of weeks in an uncomfortable halfway house, because it can lead to advancing you to home confinement. With regard to a job, Justin spoke about this guy who's probably very financially secure and doesn't need a job and doesn't want to humble himself or go through the humiliating experience of having a case manager or a bureaucrat telling him, you have to go pick up garbage on the road or work in a warehouse or something along the. If you know you don't want to do that when you get out of prison, what are you going to do about it? And I can share with you many people who made these plans early with us, and they can do something with our nonprofit. And if you want to learn about that, you should talk with Sam or talk with Justin, whoever your contact is, before you go in. What can I do? These are complications that await me. You don't even know about that unless you ask about that. So Justin just gave this the example. This guy did not want to humble himself and go take a job that can be for some people more difficult than being in prison. He doesn't want to go pick up garbage on the street. He doesn't want to do what Joseph did and go work in a soup kitchen. But I also heard Joseph talk about, oh, I did this course. Okay. I want you to be thinking about, how can I create something like this today to help me much later on in the journey? It can help me potentially get out of prison earlier. It can help me potentially have a higher level of liberty when I get out of prison. It can help me potentially persuade my judge why I am a worthy candidate for early termination of supervised release. But if you don't know how to ask those questions, if you don't know about these possibilities, then you don't know where to get it. And so that's one of the reasons that I really encourage you. Not only listen to all of the previous webinars, but take notes as we're talking so that you can ask the right questions. If somebody is angry because the government should have never charged them criminally and they should have charged you civilly, that's okay, but is that going to get you what you want? What I have found is that if you want to get what you want, we've got to stop thinking about what's already happened, and we've got to start thinking about the complications that are ahead of us. And what can I do to maneuver my way through the machine, because it's a machine and I can't change the machine, but if I understand that machine, I can figure out, how do I get through it? And everything is available on our website for free. You could just watch the videos, you could read everything, or you can work with Sam if you want, or Justin if you want. To me, I'm just passionate about helping people help themselves, because I really believe that you can have a bigger influence on your life than your lawyer did. And I don't want you to be angry. I want you to restore your confidence and your hope. And I'm not telling you to do anything I didn't do. I did it for 9,500 days in prison, and we get through this. We don't like it, but we get through it. And so I want to now ask Scott if you're willing to unmute yourself, because Justin said something there that is very similar to what was going on in your life when you first transitioned out from a prison to a halfway house. And it would be great if you told the audience about what it was like when you transit, what your thought process was when you said, God, I just left the minimum security camp and now I'm in this halfway house. What did you think about it?
Yeah, it was a humbling reminder.
Scott, why don't you before you go, introduce yourself, because maybe some of the people may not know you. How did you start working through this process? When did you start working through this process? What mindset did you have before sentencing, after sentencing, what you did, and how it influenced you?
Okay. My name is Scott. I originally had a 0 to 6 month guideline range. However, I took my case to trial. I lost. I ended up with a 51 to 57 month guideline range. I met Michael and Sam and Justin. And just as you're all doing now, I started to prepare. And it seems like no matter where you are in this journey, having to wake up every day and show up to the starting line, willing to do more work, it never ends. It keeps happening. But every day you do it feels better. With my preparations, I ended up getting a 52-month sentence. So even after taking it to trial, I was really, really lucky. I feel like I earned a downward variance, 42-month sentence. And then between RDAP, good time credit, halfway house, and First Step Act, I was out of prison in 13 and a half months. As Michael mentioned, I made it to the halfway house though. And ironically enough, Michael, I remember calling you saying, I wish I was still in prison. I don't like it at the halfway house. But it was a chance to use all the lessons that you guys are talking about and that I learned while I was away, which is to constantly stay humble and be patient, because at the end of the day, my perception is we're just numbers in this system, and how we treat the people we interact with, how we respond when things don't go our way, when we're humble, when we're empathetic, when we're patient, things go better. And I had to do that in the halfway house, and I was there for just shy of 3 weeks. But now I'm on home confinement. I have a fair level of liberty, still quite a few rules to follow, but it is far, far better than being in prison.
So you have a high level of liberty, but again, as somebody who's gone through every stage of the journey, it's not over. He's going
Correct.
to finish. I mean, first of all, congratulations. It's a phenomenal success to be charged with a crime that could have resulted in 5 years, to get it down to 42 months, to get out in 14 months. Is that right? 14 months?
13 and a half.
13 and a half months to transition from prison to halfway house to home confinement. That is an extraordinary victory. And Joseph, I want you to keep that in mind, because proportionately, that can also happen for you. If you're serving 12 months or 14 months or 18 months, the question isn't, I shouldn't be here at all, because I can't undo that. It's rather, what can I do to get out early and understand I might have to go through some things I don't want to do to eventually get what I really want, which is to be home. If you're home, that's a big victory. Now, it's a big victory for Scott right now, but it's not over. As soon as he finishes with the Bureau of Prisons, which could take another year, Scott, another year and a half?
I have until the end of this year on home confinement.
And is that when you finish with the BOP?
Correct.
Okay, so when you finish with the BOP, then an entirely new journey starts through supervised release. And you're not free until you're done with it all. Because you have to remember, don't think about this from your perspective. I know none of you belong in prison. I'm on your side. That's not my concern. My concern is, what is the other side thinking? And I always encourage people, start with an idea of saying, what person grows up saying, I want to work for the prison system? What's that person's motivation? I want to be a probation officer. What's that person's motivation? Is it to give you liberty, or does that person's job get defined and excellence in that job getting defined by doing his career advances by sometimes, not all, but for some people, by making your life harder? And those aren't my rules, right? I'm not saying that's things like senators are saying that. I mean, this is a huge bureaucracy, and it's rife with complications. And if you don't understand it, you just don't know, how do I navigate my way through it? Scott navigated his way through it like an expert. Started off with a long sentence, got a relatively long sentence of 42 months, got out at 14, got both 12 months off for RDAP, got 12 months off for or however many credits off he got for earned time credit as well. And he's going to finish this way faster than somebody who didn't architect their journey so well. So please, even if you have a year and a day, and congratulations, Joe, for getting that, if you would have told me you've gotten 3 years, I would be telling you, okay, what are we going to do to get that down? But now you got a year and a day. It's not over until you are done with supervised release, because there are going to be people that are looking at you. And as Justin said, they'll never meet you. They'll never know who you are. Those of us who are type A type people are always thinking about, I'm different, I'm going to maneuver this kind of thing around, right? But there are going to be people sitting in offices in another state that don't know anything about you. All they're going to see is something on paper. And they're going to make a decision based on what they see on that paper. The question that I want to ask every one of you, the question that I want every one of you asking, what am I doing to influence that person whom I will never meet? How can I do it? If I know how, great. Then teach us on the webinar. If you don't know how, then whose responsibility is it to learn? Then when is the responsibility to learn? Is it your lawyers? Is it, your sisters? Or is it yours? Nobody should work harder for your liberty than you. Because I can't change the past, but I can show you what worked for me. And I can show you what worked from having influenced tens of thousands of people. And my partners can. And if you've got the time, spend it on Prison Professors and watch our interviews with subject matter experts. Listen to what I ask them, listen to what they say, and then say, okay, let me take those notes and ask about that on the next webinar. Because Justin spoke about a release plan. Do you have one? We spoke about earned time credits. Do you understand how they're going to apply to you? Do you understand what you can possibly do to understand them? So that is like the preliminary basis of the first half hour of our webinar today. I hope that you guys kind of digest this and that you start thinking about some of these questions, because if you don't have questions, I'm going to go to another phase of our webinar, which is showing you our new calculator that we're working on to help you all kind of get a better understanding of what to expect. Justin, you have your hand. I noticed.
Yeah,
unmute
just
yourself.
one more minute. Thank you on this probation issue. And I want to answer a question. It's essential you don't believe everything you hear in prison, because this person that I spoke with was told in prison that he wouldn't have to work because I still believe halfway houses are not taking 25% of what you earn. So due to COVID. So he was told you're not going to even have to have a job because they're not going to get the 25%. Whether they get it or not, they wanted him to work. Please be careful about what you hear. Hardly a day goes by without us getting an email from someone in prison saying they heard something and they believe it to be true. We have to verify it. And second, someone asked how frequently they should write their probation officer. That comes back to what we discussed last week in the blog and website. You want to share something with a probation officer when you have something relevant to share. Not, I got up, I had a good breakfast and ran. Share things that are truly relevant to your growth and your reentry plan. If that's every 3 months, what programming you're participating in, what you're learning, how it's helping you, similar to a book report. Why did you read the book? How will it help you in prison, after prison? Share things that are relevant, but every 3 months or so, I think is fine. It doesn't take that long, but you're really creating an asset that you'll use to influence, as Michael have said, people you will meet or people you will never meet. But be very careful about the advice that you get in prison, and you've got to go down your own path. But to the question of how frequently, every quarter, presuming you have something relevant to share, would be my suggestion in writing the probation officer. Thanks, Michael.
So I'm seeing that there's a lot of people asking me questions on the chat. Last week, you saw that I was very active responding to the chat in real time. That was because Justin was presenting. Now I'm presenting, so it's hard for me to read, right? So I just want to say that and say, please feel free to just click the little button that allows you to raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or just unmute yourself. Just do it one at a time and ask the question. I will promise you I will answer every one of these chat questions at the end, but if I start going through it, I'm going to lose my train of thought and what I'm talking about. And I want to be respectful of everybody. I want to give you my word. I will respond to everything in this chat, okay? Whether it's a direct message to me or whether it is open to the community. But I don't see anybody hands going up. So what I would like to do, unless there's a hand going up, because once I start sharing screen, I may not see it. I'm going to share my screen. And the reason I want to share my screen with you is I want to go over this tool, because this whole concept of earned time credits is really complicated, and I've written a lot about it. I've been discussing it on all of the previous webinars. How does it apply to you? Okay. And I think it was last week's webinar or perhaps the week before, the Bureau of Prisons came out with this rule that gave us insight on how is the BOP going to start computing this. For those of you who haven't been on the webinars before and don't know what this means, there is a law called the First Step Act, and the First Step Act, what it does is it allows a person in federal prison to potentially earn credits to advance the release date. That's one thing. The other thing it does is besides advancing the release date, it also gives a person a right to more time on home confinement or an RRC. So that's like the broad perspective of the First Step Act as applies to people going in. The more you understand it, the more you're going to be able to maneuver your way using it to your advantage. But it's still very, very complicated for reasons I've described previously. This is the biggest piece of prison reform legislation in 50 years. And the Bureau of Prisons has been slow to roll it out. It's traditionally a very conservative agency. And I'm going to show you just how difficult and complicated it is, because the Bureau of Prisons came out with a guideline on how they're going to apply these credits. The first thing that has to happen is a person has to go through this risk assessment tool. And of course, on our website, we provide that risk assessment tool, and we encourage you, go through it now so that you know where you are. I presume most all of you are minimum on the pattern score, but that's what the risk assessment tool is. And that's what influences how many of these credits you can earn while you're in prison. But it is a big variable because we're not going to be there with you. So I need to help you understand it. Okay. Of course, we will always be there with you in the sense that if you're a member of our community, we're sending you information into prison to help you. We're communicating with your family and doing the best that we can, but we're not doing our job if we don't help you understand it. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see what we've done and what we're continuing to do. And this is an ongoing experience. Okay. This is an ongoing project. And I hope you can see it, but what I'm going to ask you to do afterwards is let's work through it. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with your sentencing. If you haven't been sentenced yet, there are other things that we want to talk about. Okay. If you've not been sentenced yet, that's a different concept. Okay. Of how do you prepare before sentencing? But if you've been sentenced, then you really are understandably thinking about, when am I going to get out? And there are so many variables, as you're seeing, as I scroll across this screen. Just look at all those numbers, and you may not be able to see it because it's so small, but I'm going to walk you through each one of them. And then I'm going to ask you, some of you, hey, give me some of your information and let's test this, because I'm still building this model. Okay.
Are you going to email that to us, Michael, when it's all done?
It's probably not ready to be emailed because I'm still developing it and I'm working with some engineers that are helping me on this, but I'm more than happy to respond to your personal situation on here, and we're going to just see what it does. Okay. And okay. I'm going to show you how it works. When it's all built, we'll have it on our website and anybody can plug in the variables. And there aren't that many variables that you plug in, but there's a lot of understanding that goes into it. So let me just walk you through and tell you about what it is. And I'm going to see if I can blow it up a little bit so that maybe makes it a little easier to read. And I think, can you guys read it better that way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so what we would do here is I would plug somebody's name in there, and then we'd have to know this is a variable. If it's this color, and I'm colorblind, so forgive me if I use the wrong color, but to me that looks green. I wish my wife would come over here and help me, but I wish that would, that's green. In any event, whatever color it is, we have to know the day that you're going to start your sentence to compute this. Because remember, this has to do already with, you've already been sentenced. If you know when you're surrendering to prison, I can plug that day in there and I then can carry the rest of this out. The other variable we have to put in there is, what is your sentence length? So if I know what the judge said in terms of months, this is going to be a function of this, obviously. That's pretty simple, right? If the judge sentenced me to 36, that's going to say 3, right? But some people get so overwhelmed at sentencing and they don't know what it means. 108 months, what does that mean? Well, that means 9 years, okay? So this is going to calculate automatically. And Sam, I hope you're on this call because I want you to be able to explain this to the people with whom you communicate once we've finished this. Next, then it's going to start calculating things out automatically. And so the next thing it's going to calculate here in this column is, well, what are the number of days in each month? And, you know, some months are 28, February, for every while it's 28, once a year, every 4 years, it's 29. Some months are 30 days, some months are 31 days. What we did here, and this is only a projection, we've just taken 365.25 days in a year and divided it by 12, and that gives us this basis. So we're basing every month as having 30.4375 days. Then we can say, well, what's the number of days to serve? Well, if I plug in this number and put in, say, 60, right, that number is going to be fixed. It's going to change. I have to know days in addition to months and in addition to years to calculate this thing out, because of the complicated way the Bureau of Prisons computes release dates. Those earned time credits are measured in days. So that means I have to have all of these conversions done so that I know days, so that I know now this person that has this many years is going to serve 1,800 days. And then we've got this section here, which is called the BOP computation sheet date. This is a fixed number that the Bureau of Prisons is going to come up with. Now, I don't think any of the people on this website are going to know what that is yet, obviously, because you haven't gone to prison yet. But once you go to prison, you will be able to see something. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and show you what you're going to be able to see. Okay. If you're in prison and your family member is out, your family member is going to want to know, what is the BOP saying I'm going to get out? When is the BOP saying I'm going to get out of prison? Sam, you're there, right? Show your hand if you're there. Okay, great. It's very important that you understand this and you help people that reach out to you, okay?
I gotta hop off, Michael, in 7 minutes, so just know that. I have to get back.
Okay, then tomorrow I'm going to go over it again, but I know you're going to get a lot of calls with people asking you this information. If you don't know it, I know I'll have to do this training with you, but that's okay. Let me just continue for our team. So once you're in prison, your family members are going to want to know, when do I get out? And I'm going to use Scott as an example because I'm going to need somebody's registration number. Let me find a Google Sheet for a moment. Google Chrome. There was a Google Chrome. I'm going to share a Google Chrome. Which one? It looks like I'm sharing this one right here. Okay. And I'm going to go to this website, which all of you should know and your family members should know. This is the Federal Bureau of Prisons website, bop.gov. And you can go to inmate right there at the top and you can click find an inmate. Okay. And I can ask Scott to unmute himself. Scott, actually, you can either do number or you can do name. So I know Scott's name. Let me go to Scott Laney, right? There it is. And there's Scott Laney. Okay. And it says he's got a release date. You're seeing him at home right now. He's sitting at home. Okay. But he's got a release date of December 18th, 2022. That's what his release date is today. My guess is that his release date is going to, actually it won't because you fall into that 18-month thing. But if you're going to prison, these dates can change, particularly if you have a longer sentence length, and it can change based upon these different programs you participate in. You can advance them, okay? So now I'm going to share the screen again and go back to that calculator. So this section here BOP computation sheet, that's where I'm going to get that number. And I'll be following that along while you serve your sentence because I want to help you all the way through the journey. So now I'm going to scroll my spreadsheet over to the right. I'm moving to the right because you've already gone through all of these. That's column G. Now we're going to go to column H. Notice that I have this column titled PRD, okay? That means projected release date, 0. If you've got a sentence of less than a year, and Joseph, your judge did you a favor by giving you a sentence of 1 year and a day, because that means you earned good time. If you had a sentence of 12 months, your release date would just be whatever this number is. That's the full term date. It means you get nothing as far as statutory good time. But for anybody who has a sentence that is 12 months plus 1 day, anything longer than 12 months, that person gets statutory good time. And that statutory good time is 15% of the sentence. It's projected, okay? You can lose it by getting in trouble in prison, but you can't get more, okay? That's called SGT. So remember, we've got a projected release date, PRD, and we've got a statutory good time date, which is 15% here. Then we go to column J. So what's the statutory good time reduction in days? And remember, we're calculating at 30.4375 days. It's 273.9 days. But there's another factor here. Some of you have been in jail already. Maybe they arrested you. Maybe you pleaded guilty. Whatever the case is, if you were arrested, that's automatically 1 day. If you pleaded guilty, you're automatically getting a day for that as well. Any day that you spent in any form of custody is a day that counts towards your sentence length. So we have to calculate jail time credit as well when we're making these projections. Then we go to the next column, the total of statutory good time and jail time credit reduction. That gives you this number right here, 275.9. Very, very complicated. I'm doing my best to do it slowly so that I can help you, but it's going to be very helpful at the end of this when we just take some of your dates and we work through this with you in real time. But let's go to total of statutory good time and jail time credit reduction. This one's 275.9, and that leaves us with this date, June 12th, 2026. That's the projected release date, only considering what you automatically have coming to you. You can convert that to months. You can convert that to days. You go over the change. This is column M, N, and O. We can go over here to the left and change a different date. Let's change this to original sentence length and month to 36. Well, obviously, that would change. M, N, and O, that changes here, right? And it also will influence, well, when am I starting? If I'm going to start serving my sentence on December the 1st, right? I want to plug that date in there, 01st, 22, and this spreadsheet, this calculator will give us those dates so your family can start planning for your better outcome. If you don't know this information when you're going into prison, you really don't even know how to advocate for yourself. You really don't even know if they're doing the right thing or if they're not. So it's important to understand what's the best possible outcome and what can I do to change it? Well, if you don't do anything other than get statutory good time and jail credit, well, this is where you are. So you've got then an RRC eligibility date. That's the date you possibly could go to a halfway house or home confinement, not really home confinement, but a halfway house. If you have earned good time, these dates change. So all of these are functions of what we plugged in earlier, okay? And if I scroll down a little farther, I get to people who have longer sentences. And that's going to give them this whole new universe of potential, which is, Sam, could you unmute yourself? Please, if you're there. It looks like he's not there. There's Scott, you could probably help me. Could you unmute yourself?
Yep.
So just so I got clarity here, I want to make sure I've got these dates correctly. If you have a sentence of 30 months or less, it's my understanding that the maximum you can get on RDEP is 6 months. If you have 30 to 36 months, you can get up to 9 months off. And if you have more than 12 months, it's a year. Are those the correct dates?
From what I've seen, yes, that's correct.
Well, it's the law, and I plugged it in there. I just forgot off the top of my head. I just wanted to reconfirm that as I'm working with these engineers. So I'm plugging that in here, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. So I know this is accurate. You have to have 37 months or more to get the year. And that's the sentence length. So if you're participating in RDEP, these are factors. And because they're factors, that's why I call it projected release date 2. Because if you get RDEP, that changes everything. Now, here's the other complication: earn time credits. Okay. Some of you may earn a portion of your earn time credits with a low pattern score, and some will have a minimum pattern score. So we have to project that there, right? And that's something that I'm going to ask you to do. And I can help you, of course, but if I'm not there to help you, I want your family to be able to do it on their own. I want you to be able to do it on your own, because you need to learn these concepts in case the unit team is not giving you everything you deserve. Then you have to advocate for yourself. Of course, we have a lot of webinars talking about how you would do it, but you've got to have some basis. Otherwise, you don't even know how to ask the questions. So if you have a low pattern score, right? Let's just say 1, you did 1, you get 10 days off for every month that you participate in qualified programs. If you have a minimum pattern score, you get 15 days off. So you can play with these numbers here, right? And say, oh, I'm going to do 2 months with a low and 15 months with minimum. That gives me 225. That's a total potential days off of 245. But if you've got a long sentence, okay, you might be able to do 60 months of those, and you'll get 920. Well, the maximum amount of time that can come off your sentence is 365.25. So that's another important variable, because the first 365 would come off of your sentence length, but anything over and above that would qualify you to get to home confinement or an RRC earlier. Under the Second Chance Act, you can only do a year. But if you've worked hard and you've got a long sentence, this will really help you. Okay.
Can you explain that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry that it's so complicated, but you guys are going into this really complicated labyrinth, and it's very hard for somebody who's never been in there. It's kind of like, why don't you teach me how to speak some language that doesn't use, it'd be very hard. This is very hard to understand. There's no question you cannot ask me. So I want to be very clear on this, Glenn.
So I guess my simple question would be, do you have to serve a certain amount of your sentence before? Is there a time limit before you can go to residential release or home confinement? Is there a measurement?
Yes. Yes, there is. And it will be easier for me, Glenn, to give you that clarity when we project something. Somebody at the end of this, that little demonstration here of the spreadsheet and how it works, I'm going to ask people to give me dates, and then we're going to plug it in. You're going to see. But I'm going to tell you this, Glenn. Have you been sent? You have not been sentenced.
Yes, I have 48 months.
Okay.
In January.
So I want you to know that this very complicated matter that I am giving to you right now, it is not going to apply to you. It's going to apply to people that perhaps have more than 7 years. Okay. If you don't have 7 years, this is negligible. Okay. But there are a lot of people that go to prison that have more than that. And I know that if you're in prison, you're probably going to want to help people. That when you're helping other people, you're simultaneously helping yourself. So you want to understand these things. And that's why I'm investing time and energy and resources to build a tool that I think will help people. Okay. So what this calculator is going to do is it's going to take this total number, and I'll put this down to something more reasonable, maybe put it to 15, okay? It's going to give you these different projected dates, and I'm calling that projected release date 3, because we're always projecting, okay? We're always projecting, and then we want to have these dates projected. Well, when can I actually come home? And so there's a lot of variables here, and this is a terrible one. This is a terrible one, I think, for people with really short sentences. Because and remember, it's not short by my standards. It's certainly not short by your standards. If you're Joseph, you're serving a year and a day, and right now you're still living in the ether of saying, God, I'm so happy. But the reality is anytime you're away from your family and the people who love you and the people you love, it's hard. It's hard. And so even if you have a year and a day, I think that's a long time. And I think I'm sorry that you're going through that. But the reason this is important is because based on this rule, the Bureau of Prisons is not going to change your release date once you move within 18 months of your release date. You'll still earn the earn time credits, but they will apply to something else. And so that's the reason, one of the reasons we're always working to advocate and to help people through the journey, because we have to get to these areas here. Well, if they don't change your release date, okay, that means that now what they're going to do is they're going to take those credits that you've earned and make you more eligible to go to home confinement. So this is all better than anything that existed before you went to prison, but it's very complicated. You've got to understand it. Our team will definitely be here to do the best that we can to help you understand it and to help you advocate for yourself. Let me see. Excuse me. But I want now, I've given you this spreadsheet. What I think will be helpful is to use somebody as a guinea pig who's going through the journey. And I'm gonna, ask you, let's plug a date in there and see where we are. Does somebody want to volunteer with that? I see Jonathan, there's my man. He's always active to come on out. So welcome, Jonathan.
All right, what's happening?
Let me share my screen again so everybody can see what I am doing and so that I can explain why these functions are changing, okay? So this is great. We're gonna go to Jonathan and I'm just gonna plug Jonathan's name in there and say, Jonathan, okay? And then what I'm also going to do is I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna put that row here. So the next guy is gonna go here, okay? But Jonathan, we're gonna start with you.
Okay.
When is the date that you are going to start surrendering?
Well, I got confirmation yesterday that they want me to surrender on December 1st.
Oh.
I might choose to go earlier, but let's just say December 1st.
Great. And what is the original sentence length in months?
48.
Sam, I want you to watch this because this is how you're going to use this tool to help the people with whom you communicate. The colors that are this color here, you're just going to plug in there 48. Got it? Now I can do the rest. So I don't need this right now because you're not in prison yet. But while you're in prison, we will continue to try and monitor that for you. Okay. So now I know that. How much time have you spent in custody so far?
So I've not been in custody or handcuffs or anything. I did plead guilty, but I walked out of the courtroom and went home. But
didn't you have to get your fingerprints taken and your mugshot taken when you pleaded guilty?
Yes, but that lasted 20 minutes.
Full stop. That's a day, buddy. Don't throw that 20 minutes out. One day closer to home. Okay.
Okay.
Counts. All right. Now let's go down here to the level.
So how do you know that they're counting it, by the way?
Because it's called the law. Okay.
Am I going to have to tell anyone about this?
No, this is automatic. Okay.
Okay.
Good. So it's good to know though, right? You've already got a day in the bank. Okay. Okay. So what we have right now is a projected release date right now, just with your statutory good time and your day of release. Right now, your projected release date is April 24th, 2026. Okay? Let's
Yep.
take a look at that. Hold on a second, because there's a little secret here, right? Let me go to that date, year. Let's go to 26. And let's go to month. Let's go to April. Whoops, I'll go back to year. Let's go to April. And April, what did I say your date is?
4/24/26.
Oh my goodness, look how lucky you are. It falls on a Sunday. If it falls on a Sunday, you get out the Friday before. Okay, so that's a little bit of inside baseball there. They don't let
Okay.
you out on a Sunday. Okay, so
Yep.
let's continue, because that's not going to be your real release date. Okay, we're going to keep
Okay.
going over. Okay, now we're going to go over here to this section here, but that's your projected release date 1. So we kind of have that. That's just the law. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're going to kind of skip over this kind of stuff, because I know you've got RDAP. And I know that you've got more than 12 months. So already we've advanced this to your release date now is April 24th, 2025. Is that right? Yes.
Correct. Okay.
1 year advance. Now let's continue to scroll over. Boom, 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 boom. And we've got some complications now, because how many months is that? I should probably put another column in here that will subtract this month from the other month, and I will do that. So this is why I wanted to do this exercise. What else would be helpful? I'm going to go ahead and plug a thing in there to remind me, because I'm still building this. I'm going to change the color of this spreadsheet right here and change that one to a different color. And I'm going to write in here number of months given RDAP. Okay, there. And I'll just change the color of that to make it black. And I'll come back and plug this in later. But I know for you, Jonathan, that we're really looking at, this is 22, 23, 24, 25. It's about, what is that, 2.5 years or something like that? Whatever the months are, we could estimate how many months are you going to earn time credits while you're in prison. Okay, let's take a very conservative approach on this. Would you like to take a conservative approach or an aggressive approach?
Let's go conservative.
Okay, so let's go conservative. Let's say that you're going to earn 1 month with a low pattern score, because the Bureau of Prisons is slow and it's a bureaucracy and they may not get it done on time. And then let's talk about minimum pattern score. Well, I suspect that by the time you get into RDAP, you will be a minimum. Okay, so I know that's 9 months. Let's try and use 15 months. That's 225 days that you're going to get applying to your sentence. And so now I can go to a projected release date number 3. This is the appropriate release date. So if column AI is less than 325, that's this one. So now we are at September the 1st, 2024, where you should be writing these down so that we can be assessing these as we go. Before it was April 24th, 2025. Now it's September the 1st, 2024. If all this works out well, that's the date right there, okay, that you have right now. September the 1st, 2024. This doesn't apply to you because you don't have more than 365 days. So that's irrelevant. But this does apply to you. So if you've got a September the 1st, 2024 projected date, we can now say, well, when are you going to go to an RRC? Okay, September 24th, we know that you're eligible to go in September of 23 based on the Second Chance Act. Okay, we know that. But we also know that you're eligible for home confinement 6 months before that. So these are like the best kind of things we're looking at here. everything has to be in alignment for this to kind of work out. For you to get out in April of 23. Okay, for you to go to home confinement in April of 23.
Well, you mean 24?
No, I mean 23, because
No.
remember, your date is over.
These but these dates are, I mean, it's going to be, if I'm surrendering December of 22, how would I come home 5 months later?
How's that 5 months later? 22. Oh, that's right. 5 months later. Good point. That's why I want to go through this exercise. If I take this date here, let's just say, let's go off, let's try it now just using our head. Okay. This is very helpful to us as I'm building this, just using our head. If we say the projected release date, what did I say it was? September of 20. If you go in December of 22, right?
December of 22, yep.
And you get there and you complete RDAP, right? You know that you get 12 months off of that.
Mhm.
You know that you get statutory good time. What did we say that was before I built this calculator? Let's go through this calculator again.
I think it was, I think it was September 1st of 24.
But I've got here for you April of 25, don't I?
Yes.
April of 25.
Well, actually, you said March 24th of 25.
That's what we did before? Is that
That's,
what I
yeah.
said before?
You gave me two dates, March 24th of 25 and then September 1st of 24.
No. Let's try it again. We're going to go back to your case. You've got a 48-month sentence, okay? With statutory good time alone, you've got a date of April 26th, April 24th, 2026. Flat out. That's just your date if you don't do anything in prison, correct? Do you see that? I'm taking how am I getting that? I'm taking you surrendering here.
Michael, we can't see the screen anymore, the chart.
Oh, it's okay. You can write it down. I can share you my screen if you'd like, but let me do that then. Let me find my screen. I apologize for that. I can't see what you see. Let's see. So I'm going to go back to that. Let's do this slowly. Do you have a pencil, Jonathan? Jonathan, do you have a pencil?
Sorry, I think you muted me. Yes, I do.
Okay. I didn't mean to mute you. Use this pencil because I won't be able to see this when I'm sharing my screen. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen and we're going to figure this out together. Okay. We're going to start with a December 1st, 22 surrender date with a 48-month sentence. Means you're also going to earn good time, and that good statutory good time, when I take that into account, that gives you a release date of April 24th, 2026. Write that date down.
I got it.
Okay. First of all, does that date seem plausible to you right now? No RDAP. Is that about what you're calculating?
Yes.
Okay. That's all that is taking 15% off of your sentence and then adding it to 22. Now let's go over and take RDAP. If we know that date, and remember that date, it's April of 26, write that down. Let's call that projected release date 1.
Yep. PR1.
PRD1, but that's fine.
PRD1.
Now we're going to do PRD2 because you're going to take RDAP. So you know what year comes off of your sentence, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now we know that it's April of 25. That's PRD2.
Yep.
Okay. Then we're going to say there's these earned time credits that you earned, and you earned 200 based on these numbers of doing 15 months of your sentence and doing this, you earned 235 days of credit. Okay. And so we've got to take those 235 days off of your projected release date. That takes you from April 25 minus 235 days. That's where it takes you to September of 24. So if you surrendered on 22, Does that seem plausible to you?
Yes, but the only question I would have is, am I really going to get all of those earned time credits? Once I finish RDAP, won't I be under that 18-month mark?
So that's a great question. And that's going to depend on when they give you RDAP. This is all based on the BOP's computation sheet. And we don't know when the BOP is going to give you that 12 months credit. If the BOP loads it up, front loads it and gives you the 12 months credit, you're not going to get as much time off as you want. That's why I've got to give you these projections. If I put 0 there, okay, that your date is still April 14th. If I put 5 there, right, you're here. If I put 9 there, your date changes like that, right? It depends when the Bureau of Prisons grants you that 12-month reduction. If they want to do you a favor, they will not grant you that RDAP reduction until after you've finished it. The longer they wait to give you that reduction, the more it works in your favor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if you get into RDAP first month and they do some things, and Sam, I want you to contribute here, and Scott, I want you to contribute here if you're there, okay? If they calculate that 12 months off at the start, that's going to change your computation date. And if you're within 18 months of your release date, you kind of get shafted here.
So here's what happened with me at Miami. The
Okay.
question is, when will he get into the program? So if he surrenders in December, the next program at Miami is February. So the end of February. Will he get into that February class, or will they push him off to May? We don't know. And when they took my year off, and it might vary by facility, my year came off roughly 60 days after my class started. So I started in the August class, August 18. By the end of October, roughly, the year came off. Now, if I didn't complete it, it would have gone back on. But mine dropped off on the computation sheet after about 60 days.
So full stop there. That's one example in
Right.
one institution, and that is before the BOP introduced this rule.
Correct.
So it's important to understand that, because we don't know when the BOP is going to give it. Let me ask Scott, when did they take your 12 months off, Scott? At the beginning of enrolling in RDAP or at the end of enrolling in RDAP?
They gave me a conditional, so they took it off before, but with that 3621E, it's not official. I also continued to receive.
Full stop, Scott. I just want to be sure I'm clear on that. So when you surrendered to Yankton and you got admitted into RDAP, they immediately gave you the 12 months off?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a full stop. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue to do that, but if they do, it will work against you. Now, Scott says he's still got the earned time credits, but remember, the rule has changed since both Sam and Scott went to prison. So when you're going to prison, Jonathan, you're going to be subject to this new rule, which I discussed in previous webinars about the BOP finalizing a date at 18 months. So you're asking a very good question. All I can do right now is project. And so if I projected 0 there, okay, well, then you're April of 25, less halfway house time. If I gave you 9 months, you're at November of 24, and then your halfway house time is going to come off of that. So that's why we have to be using our head and saying, how do I figure these things out? And I need you to know this is going to be a moving target that we are going to monitor and continue sending to you while you're in prison, with hopes that you could use this to advocate for yourself.
Right.
But-
So quick question. So once, let's say what Sam is saying is correct, and let's say I don't get into RDAP, let's say February. So I'm there for 3 months. I start RDAP, which is 9 months. So within the first 12 months of my sentence, I have completed RDAP.
Okay, so you
Right.
completed RDAP, but there's 2 different variables here, Jonathan. You just gave me one variable, right? So the
Yeah.
one thing I know is when you got there, you said you spent 3 months. Did you earn 0 lows, but you did earn 3 months?
Well,
of-
my plan would be to join in any class that I
I'm
can
aware
and
that
get,
that's your plan. But
right.
your plan isn't nearly as relevant as the BOP's plan. We've got to make sure that you get in there, and we're working to help bring more programs in so that everybody can participate as much as they want, but you're going into a bureaucracy. And so that's why I said, let's kind of be conservative here, because the worst case would be what Scott said, is that as soon as you got there, as soon as you got into RDAP, they front loaded your RDAP stuff. Would you be within 18 months at that point? I don't know. If you surrendered in December, January, February, March, now you're March of 23, March of 24 plus 6 is about September of 20. You're still going to earn some good time credit. So maybe you'd earn 12. So maybe you'd get another total of 12, which will give you 180 days.
Won't I get earned time credit while I'm in RDAP too?
Yes, you will, because you're not going to be at that 18-month range. Okay?
Right.
So
Mike, when is this 18-month rule going to be imposed? Because I have
it's
people
already imposed. They haven't started doing the computation sheets, but I can show you the form right here. This was distributed last week or 10 days ago or so. So they've built the model already in Texas.
Yeah, I'm going to use my calculator real quick for you.
Because I have people right now in the halfway house who just received updated dates 2-3 days ago, and they were supposed to get out in February, and it got bumped forward to November.
So that's great. That I don't know that they may already be doing it. I think they're doing it based on release dates right now. They're the people that are closest to their release date. They're the first ones. They have to rescore like 100,000 people.
Okay, so here's what I just figured out. If again, and this is if it goes this way, if I get RDAP done within the first 12 months of my sentence, once that 12 months is off, once the 12 months is off that I, obviously have been in there with statutory good time, I will have 16.8 months left in my sentence.
Okay. But what you have is not as relevant as when they run your computation sheet, because it's the computation sheet that matters. And you don't even know what a computation sheet is, but it's reflected. Your family will be able to see it by going to bop.gov, and they'll say, oh, this is his date. That date will change for you from the day you surrender. You're going to surrender on December the 1st. Your computation sheet probably won't be done until January the 1st. And then it'll just pop up on the BOP's website. There'll be a release date there, but it'll be different in March. It'll be different in July. It'll be different in September if they're continuing to update your release date, which they should be doing. It's in your best interest if they don't do it until you finish RDAP, because then you'd get the maximum benefit of all earned time credits. You're going to get some benefit, Jonathan, and this is going to be a good tool for you to kind of project things out. But I think that this is a pretty good indication that if you surrender in December of 22, you're going to be getting out. You're going to be transitioning. You're going to be finishing with the BOP around October, somewhere in there of 24. But you're going to get out of prison probably at least 6 months before that, which would be April of 24, and potentially, you could potentially get out much late. You could potentially get out. I think you can potentially get out in late. I think you could potentially, best things go in your favor. You're going to do about, on a 48-month sentence, I think you're going to do about 14 or 15 months. Everything works out great. That's what's going to happen. Okay. That's what we have to be thinking about. But we have to monitor this with you all the way through the journey.
All right.
But the
Thank
more,
you.
but since we have that kind of mindset, we can kind of work with it. So I'm going to lower your hand, or I guess you can lower your hand. And I see Ryan has a hand up, and I promise you, I will stay on as long as anybody needs me on. Okay. Ryan, could you unmute yourself and we can talk?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Okay. Two things. One, happy to submit my date and term if you want another. guinea
Yeah,
pig
why don't I
poll.
share the screen and we'll try that with you, okay? And I'm letting you all know, in the disclaimer, this is a projection. I'm building this model, and I need a lot more data to finish building this model, but you giving me this information is helpful. So let's go to Ryan. And what date are you starting?
October 5th.
So 10/05/22. And what is your sentence length?
1 year and 1 day.
Great. So 12 months. I'll just put that there. And we're going to go over here. So you get good time. So your statutory good time date. And did you spend any time in custody?
1 day.
And that, what do you mean by 1 day? What happened?
I pled guilty, so I did fingerprints, DNA, mugshot.
But you were never arrested or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay, so that's 1 day. Okay. And okay, so your projected release date right now is August the 10th, 23. Does that seem plausible and understandable to you? Just your release date. I don't mean when you get out of prison. I mean, this is when you finish with the BOP, and there's a big difference. A release date means you're done with the Bureau of Prisons and you go to supervised release. So there's a difference. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
And does that seem plausible to you?
Yeah, that's kind of mentally where I'm earmarked my date at for right now.
Okay, that's a solid date. Okay, you don't have to do anything to get that. It's definitely going to be less than that. Okay, but it's good to know that. So then let's go down the road down here a little bit more. You're not going to do RDAP or anything like that. So, and there are other factors, Ryan. I mean, there's the CARES Act that's in place right now that can have some influence on you. Who knows what's going to be in existence later, but right now it's the law. And is the BOP going to grant you what you want? I don't know, but that's a possibility. And so, but I'm not even calculating that in here at all. I'm only calculating here what I know. And what I know is that's a real date. Then I'm going to say, what's the RRC eligibility date for you? And for you, it's really, you're eligible and you're already eligible. Okay, because the Second Chance Act makes you eligible. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's unlikely you're going to get it, but you theoretically by law could serve all your time in a halfway house because you're within a year. Okay, anybody within a year, that can happen, but it's unlikely that it's going to happen. So I'm going to just pass all of this because I know you're going to also earn some credits. So I'm going to have to play with yours because you got to, I know it's not short to you, but it's short in the Bureau of Prisons. So yours is a little more complicated. It's going to require some manual stuff on my part. But let's just say you're going to do 2 months. I would say you'll do one. Let's just say one of those. And I would say you're going to do at least, I would say you're going to do at least a year and a day. I would say you're going to do at least, I don't know, because of the way they calculate it, because you're under 18 months. So this whole concept of getting out early, it's hardly even relevant to you because you're going to go to a home confinement. If your release date, I mean, we could just do yours kind of in our head because you're already going to have this release date of August. You're eligible, of course, to go to home confinement in 3 months under the CARES Act today. And that's so close, it could still be in existence. What kind of health are you in?
I'm going to be turning 49 years old in January, and I'm in pretty decent health. I don't really have many pre-existing conditions there.
Okay, so let's just not even consider that CARES Act thing, but let's consider some they give you some earn time credit, and they give you a date, yeah, August, December. You're probably going to get, I would say, between high end. Where are you going? Do you know?
Thompson, Illinois.
Do we know anybody, Sam, at Thompson? Sam, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'd have to check. Yes, we have a client.
I'm here. This is Justin. I've connected Ryan with Tom, a former client who served time there.
Well, he served time there. Do you know? I'll be there, Ryan. I'm going to get to meet you there because I'll be presenting at Thompson while you're there. That's going to be
Excellent.
awesome.
Put in a good word for me.
Well, I don't know if I could do that, but I can certainly shake your hand when I'm there. But let me ask Justin a question. When did your guy get out of prison?
He's been home a couple of years from Thompson. He initially was,
So
I believe, went to Peak. It's
not
it
going
may
to be
have been more than
relevant to what I'm
that,
talking
actually.
about. It's not relevant to what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Yeah.
Sam, do you know anybody at Thompson?
Where's Jeff Pica?
Carol, do you know where Jeff Pica is? He's not there.
He's not. He's at Oxford, not.
Okay, I have to check. I can't open that screen because of this screen.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. The only reason I'm asking is because the reason I'm asking, Ryan, is this is a discretionary matter for the warden. And some wardens that I've known, they automatically give you 6 months. Okay. I don't care what your sentence length is. If you're eligible for 6 months, they're giving you 6 months. Some don't. So I would say you're probably going to get somewhere in the range of 6 to 3 months is realistic. So you could just subtract that on your own and say either sometime between February of 23 and May of 23, you will transition to a halfway house or some combination of halfway house home confinement.
How is
So-
that determined?
That's determined by a couple of things. You're going to have a really good release plan, which I think we've discussed and shown. You've seen that examples that I've given on that, correct?
Yes, I'm working on it currently.
Good. So let me unshare. So let's just kind of remember those dates of what I said. I think you're going to get 6 months, which is going to put you somewhere between March and May, or February and May. Okay. Now, how do you influence that? Well, we've done previous webinars that I recommend you watch if you haven't on how you influence staff. I would also recommend you watch those webinars I've done with John Guston, who used to run the halfway house home confinement program for the Bureau of Prisons. In those webinars, you're going to hear what he says influences the process. You are going to have, if you don't do anything, it's just going to be the Bureau of Prisons that influences the process, and whatever the warden says, that's kind of what's going to happen. If you want to nudge that along, you need to have a release plan that you have ready before you surrender, and you tell the Bureau of Prisons what you're doing, what you intend to do while you're in there, how ready you are to come home, because under the First Step Act, they kind of reward you for excellence. Very different from when I was in prison. Now you can influence that process with a really good release plan, but if you don't know what one looks like, you can't build one. So we've sent you, if you haven't gotten it already, ask Sam or Justin or whoever your contact is at our company, and they'll send you one. If you've got one and you're working on it, develop it, share it with somebody on our team. I know that Glenn wants to share his. I hope he will do so on this call. But develop that plan and then continue to develop while you're inside. If you look at the sample that I created, Ryan, do you have the sample that I created?
Yes, I do. And I feel like yours is at the doctorate level. And you
Yeah,
know,
but it's at the
that elementary.
doctorate level. Well, it's only at the doctorate level because I did 26 years, right? I want you to be thinking about doing 6 months. And just as I, really fleshed it out over time, you could flesh things out like this. One of the things that I'm doing right now as an example, okay? Okay, you guys can see me, or are you looking at a screen? I think you can see me, right?
I can see you.
Okay. So this is kind of one of these things, right? This is like a book. I want you to think about this. Okay, Ryan, you're going to prison. Let me just ask you a question, and forgive me for not knowing details, as if I don't know everybody, and I work on a different area of our company, but how old are you?
I'm 48.
48. Oh, you just told me that. Sorry.
No problem.
How many books would you say you have read in the last year? Be
15.
honest. Be
15.
honest. You've read 15 books in the last year?
I'm kind of a Stephen King fan, and he cranks them out pretty quick. And
Yeah, right on. Okay. So you're going to read a lot more than that when you're in prison. Just letting you know. If you read 15 out here in prison, how many do you think you're going to read?
I would imagine one a week.
Okay. So I would imagine you're going to read a lot more than that. Okay. Just because you're already a reader, and when you're in prison, the art of doing time is to forget about the world outside. So here's the thing. If you went to prison and your release plan, you said, I am going to read, let's just use a concept that you're going to be in prison. Let's put a 6-month plan in place. 6 months. In 6 months, I'm going to read 30 books. Okay? 30 books. And if you went there the first day and you said to the prison person, whoever they are, the case manager, part of your release plan, I'm going to read 30 books while I'm here. And every time I read one of those books, I'm going to create this book report. And when I say I'm going to create this book report, I'm going to describe who the author is, why I chose to read this book, what I learned from reading this book, and how reading this book is going to influence my success upon release. Start off kind of imagining that plan. That's a plan. That's a very coherent plan. Then you say, do something else. Every time you've written and you created a report, you sent it to us. And we then created some type of a teaching tool from it. And then we took your words and we converted it into a book like this. And we gave you this book. And now you've got this book with all of your book reports in it. And now you've got a plan. You've got something that's tangible. And you take that to your case manager. And you show them what you've done since you've been in here. Do you think you would be different from everybody else in the prison?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. You'd have something tangible. Okay. Or you built a website. And I know you're a web guy. Are you the guy that I talked to that you're a super digital guy?
Yes.
So you're a web guy. You build a website and you send your things out and you put it up, publish it on your website, and you publish this book or whatever, right? And you get this done. Or every week you're sending it in. And you're not only giving it to your case manager, you're sending it to the RRM. Okay. This person that you're never going to meet that's going to have influence on you. And you're right. Dear RR, because you're going to know where you're going. Where do you live? What part of the country are you in?
I'm about an hour west of Chicago.
Well, okay, so you're in the Midwest. So I could find out where's the RRN that's going to oversee you. And we'll get you the address. And just as Justin said he did when he was in prison, he wrote to the probation officer. You send a copy of all the book reports that you're reading to that place. What you're doing, Ryan, is you're marketing yourself. You're influencing yourself right now. You are making people that you will never meet, they're going to know who you are. And when you get put in for this RRM or home confinement, that's really what you want. You want to be this guy that they already know you're not a problem. They know you're ready to go. You're different from everybody else. They're going to see something more that you have done. That's one of the ways that I would have used to influence the journey ahead. And I would recommend that to everybody on this webinar. Be thinking about what can you do to influence the journey ahead, whether it's a website, creating some documented thing that's tangible that makes you different from everybody else. That's what I'm looking to convey on these webinars, because as you said, Ryan, at the start, what do? I don't know what to do. I'm giving you a very tangible thing here. And if you want help doing it, I mean, I'm telling you what to do now. You have to do it. If you want our team to help you, talk with Sam about it, right? If you want to do it on your own because you're a digital guy, we're showing you. Scott, you did that really effectively. How many of those book reports did you do while you were in prison? And how did it influence your life?
I did 51 book reports, and it's tough because I like to think it influenced my life in a certain way, but I don't know, right? My case manager didn't come out and go, hey, I'm making sure you get your extra earned time credits and time in the halfway house because I appreciate what you've done. So it's sort of interesting just showing up every day and working and then, like you said, having to get that in front of those people, but you won't always get that feedback. At least that was my experience.
That's great experience and that's great feedback, Scott. And Ryan, that's kind of what I want you thinking about, is that I can't tell you what's going to move the needle in the journey. I can just tell you, if you're not working hard to influence in every way, you're talking to Scott, who had a 42-month sentence and finished it in 13 or 14 months. That's the best possible outcome. At the start of our webinar, we heard from Joseph, who was facing 50, 60 months in prison, and he just got sentenced to a year and a day because he can't pinpoint which one of the things worked. And I can't tell you which thing is going to work. What I can tell you is if you differentiate yourself from everybody else, you are going to move the needle to your advantage. And that's what I want you to be doing. Scott, go ahead.
You know, on that note, I think what a lot of the people who haven't been to prison yet can't appreciate, but should be aware of when they get there, is you don't know what types of opportunities will come up throughout your incarceration to add to this list. For me, one thing that completely came out of left field was there was a resume writing class at the prison that many inmates were required to take as part of their team sheet. And you'll learn more about what a team sheet is. No one was willing to teach it. So I stepped up and I offered to teach that class. My case manager put that on my review. So it says, what has Laney been doing at prison? Oh, he hasn't gotten in any trouble. He participates in activities. He shows up for RDAP. Oh, and by the way, he's teaching a resume writing class. I think that looked great and carried a lot of weight. Now, I didn't know that opportunity was going to present itself, but when it did, you got to jump on that stuff and go for it and help other people out as well.
You got to always remember, like, what is the best thing that you can do to make yourself, as I said in the previous webinar, the purple cow, the thing that people notice in a good way. You want to be noticed as somebody who's not complaining, not asking for something, not pestering them, but standing out because of your pursuit of excellence. So define excellence and then execute on what excellence looks like. And what we're trying to give you is a pathway to excellence. Hopefully it's going to have the best outcome as well. So Ryan, I think that you are looking at probably 3 to 6 months of release. And given the way that the system is transitioning, I think that you will serve that at home. So I would say if August is your anticipated release date, your transition to home confinement is probably going to be 3 to 6 months before that. And of course, we will do everything we can while you're in there to give you this guidance on what we're learning in different parts of the country. That's one of the reasons I created this form, is so that we could collect a lot of data on people and what's happening in other parts of the country, and then hopefully get you to use this yourself. And of course, I will use all my influence, with whatever influence I have, in trying to persuade administrators. You know, this is what it should look like for somebody to get the benefit. Ryan, I think I answered your question. I don't see any other hands, but I do see a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm going to go through the chat and see if as I read them and respond. Jonathan, just go ahead and unmute yourself before I go to the chat. Jonathan, you had your hand up, or was that a mistake?
Yeah, no, I wanted to just quickly ask, so if I start working on this release plan and going through it, and I create it on my computer and it's looking nice, how do I bring that in with me? How do I?
Oh, that's super simple, right? You use the US mail, okay? You just print it, and you know when you're surrendering, December the 1st, is that right? So on November the 30th, print it, put it in an envelope, and send it to yourself. But don't print any pictures, because they may not let it in with pictures. right? Even pictures on.
Right, so,
Nothing.
right, but in these sample release plans I'm seeing are pictures of driver's licenses, social security cards,
Yeah.
you know?
So you know what?
There's a difference between making-
Carol's, my wife is giving me some insight because, like I said, I don't deal with the consumer side of our business, but she's an admin. So
There's
tell
a
me again.
difference between a black and white copy versus a color picture printed on paper. They don't want a color picture printed on paper.
How about black and white?
A black and white copy on regular paper seems to be acceptable.
So this is one of the complexities about the Bureau of Prisons is all the prisons are different. They've got the stupidest rules, Jonathan. For
Okay.
example, she just told me this story about, she sent a release plan into a lady who was serving time in Alderson. And it got rejected because on the page, there was a picture and it
Color, printed in color.
printed in color. Had it been printed in black and white, not a problem. But because it was printed in color, they rejected it and sent it home.
Michael,
Yes,
could you just send it directly to your case manager? That's what I did with those types of pertinent
I
documents.
think that's a great idea, but you don't know, so you don't know who your, there's many ways that I would do it. The first way is I would send it to yourself and just use black and white ink. The second way is once you're there, have your family and you know who your case manager is, send it to your case manager. Okay.
And then would the case manager then give it to me to continue adding on to it?
Well, you're going to get it yourself, right? You could send yourself one without pictures, just to be sure. You could you send a copy to us. Okay. We'll put it in your project file. When you get there, we're on your core links file. We'll happily print it out and get it to you. Okay. That's fine. Just send it. Does he communicate with you? Jonathan, what's your last name?
Rufe?
Rufe. Is he in your? Send it to Sam, whatever, and then we'll put it in your project file, so we'll have it. And if you have problems getting it, we'll get it to you.
Right,
Oh,
well, I'm
Carol
just
will
saying,
send you. Carol will send you a confidential link. Would you make?
Okay,
Okay, my wife just
is-
made a note of it, Jonathan. She'll send
Okay.
you a Dropbox link, so it goes into a private folder. She's gonna send it to you right now, Carol. She's sending it to you right now. So you'll get a confidential
Okay, so-
link, and then when you're uploaded, just upload it into that doc.
is a release plan that does not have pictures of social security cards, licenses, birth certificates, is that still an effective release plan?
Yes, because they're gonna ask you for that. And that's gonna be one of the areas that you're gonna be ahead of the game. So yes,
Right.
that's why I put it in that sample release plan.
Okay,
Okay, let me move on to some of the other questions. Is that okay, Jonathan?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Michael, can I ask a quick question? Just piggyback off something Jonathan said. Logistically, how do you update your release plan in prison if you don't have access to a computer or?
But you do, Scotty. And it's good to meet you. I don't think we've spoken before, so I welcome you to our webinar. You do have access to a computer in prison. It's not the same as here, but you're going to have access to this quasi email system. Are you familiar with the core link system, Scotty, or am I giving you something brand new?
No, I know about it, but I haven't watched the webinar on it yet.
Okay, well, that's okay. If you check on the website, there's a very simple, you don't have to watch a whole webinar. There's a very simple webinar on how does core links work. It's only got like a 5 or 7 minute video and it gives you a sample, but you will be able to type core links. And I would recommend that do you have a family support group outside?
Absolutely.
Great. So what you're going to do is you're going to teach them how to do this by taking do you have a copy of our word process template on?
I just asked you for it. I just asked Sam and.
Okay, we'll make sure that we get it. Could I ask Carol to make a note for me, honey? Scotty Carper, make sure that we send him a copy of the Word document release plan and also a sample of the PDF. I do really urge you, Scotty, watch the webinar on that.
I
There's a
have.
lot of information and I think you need to see it.
I have
So-
watched it.
We'll get you that. Another question you said?
No, I said I have watched it, but we're good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
buddy. Thank you, Scotty. Who's next? Okay, any other hands? No hands. I can go through the chats then. Okay. After Joseph, please. Rob, what work do I need to be doing pre-sentencing, just volunteering? Rob, I don't know if you're still on the webinar, but somebody asked what kind of work you should do before sentencing, just volunteering. I just want you to be thinking about this, okay? You're going to go before sentencing before a federal judge, and that judge, I don't know who you are, Rob, I'm sorry, but you might be a really successful guy, and it would like Joseph is a really successful guy in his life. And what he did at sentencing is before sentencing, because he really built this whole mitigation strategy and story to make himself the best candidate. And you heard what he said. He took jobs for $13 an hour, and the judge commented on it. He said, I really like that you've humbled yourself, and it takes a lot for somebody who used to be a super powerful person to come down and go work in a golf course or drive an Uber or work in an Amazon warehouse. I know you don't want to do it, but those are things that really help. Sam, you could talk with Sam or Justin and talk about different ways that our nonprofit has been able to work with various people to give you strategy. You also heard Joseph talk about doing this course with us. These are mitigation strategies that you need to be asking questions about. Your lawyer's probably not going to be the most skilled in giving you ideas, but our team members will. You could also watch a lot of that on the webinars. You could either work with us, you could do it on your own. But my recommendation to you, Rob, is think about differentiating yourself from everybody else that goes before sentencing. And you will be much more influential than your lawyer was in the sentence that you get. Joseph, you are the reason that you got 12 months in a day, I think, not your lawyer. Would you agree with that, Joseph? Yeah. So, yeah. Definitely. So see, it's up to you. Joseph was willing to work hard, and he recognized there's nobody that should fight harder for your liberty than you. So I think Joseph gave us a great piece of information. I think that you need to be thinking about as well. Let me look at Lisa. How often did you write these letters to your probation officer? Justin already responded to that, Lisa. Scotty, how did you know who your probation officer was going to be? Well, you don't, right? You know what district you're in. And this is what I would always recommend. Just write to your district. I was in Southern Cal, and I was going to get released into Northern Cal, and I would just write to the probation officer. My name is Michael Santos. I'm in prison. I've been in prison for 22 years. I'm going to get out in 3 more years. And, I start building that relationship that way. Okay, Ryan, to everyone, how is it determined if you go to a halfway house first? I responded to that already, or to home confinement. You generally, home confinement is governed by the halfway house, Ryan. So that's how it starts. There's going to be a residential reentry manager who's going to assign you there, but that process really starts in prison. I think that you will go to home confinement. But you may have to start in a halfway house. It could be you're there like Scott for only a couple of weeks before you get to home confinement. Glenn agreed that was me to go on my assignment. You guys are helping it get changed, and I'm very appreciative. We're appreciative of you, Glenn. How much time did Scott have to prepare before going in? Scott, you and I worked together for 6 months, a year before you went in. Is that right?
Yeah, quite a while. I think we connected after my trial, but I had about 4 months between conviction and sentencing, and then another 4 months between sentencing and surrender date.
Okay. Michael, I scored a 37 on my PSR, but my lawyer hasn't told me what I am looking at. Could you tell me or give me an idea of how much time I may get? Sure, I can. But Michael, I want to understand what you say. I scored a 37. Does that mean with regard to the sentencing guidelines?
Yes, the total score was 37.
Sure. I can show you. I can not only tell you, I would like to show you. So Let me go back to the Chrome. God, I may have to take this call. Scott, talk for a little bit. This is the Bureau of Prisons probably calling.
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, Michael, can you hear me? Let's see, am I off mute? Yep.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and pull that up. Let me grab that here. Have you seen this sheet before? You can Google federal sentencing guidelines. I'm new to Zoom, but let's see if I can't share my screen here and do this with
It's-
you.
I'm gonna take this call with the Bureau of Prisons, so if, Scott, if you could carry on, I'll come back afterwards, but I'm gonna do on the webinar. I'll lead it again tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Thanks, bye.
Sure. Okay. Sorry, Michael, I wasn't prepared to jump in, so let me pull this up and
That's fine.
look at this for you, and then I'll try and do a screen share as well. Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. Dun, 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 dun. This part. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. So for most people on the webinar, if you look over here at the top, you'll have this criminal history category. We'll all be in a 1. You progress in that as you've had more interactions with the law. On the left, you have your offense level. So at a 37, you would be looking at 210 to 262. Are you sure that's correct, what your attorney told you?
Yes. Yes.
I was a 37 too. This is Jonathan.
Okay.
I was a 37. You get 3 points off or 3 levels off, you know, if you accept responsibility, plead guilty. So I'm not sure if he falls into that category. And then of course, yep. And then if you do any substantial assistance, you know, maybe you, you know, did some stuff behind the scenes with the government. Maybe you will testify at a grand jury or even at a trial. All those things will bring, you'll get a variance down. So I started at a 37. And when all's said and done, I think I ended up at a 22. And that's how I got my 48-month sentence.
And Michael, was this on your PSR you scored a 37, or was this just your attorney running through your charges, the loss amount, et cetera?
The PSR, right now, my lawyer is fighting a couple things to try to get it the number lowered again. But I am going to have to testify in court, and I've been given the government substantial assistance in their investigation.
Okay, so you have not been sentenced yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's a good position to be in, and this is where a lot of the mitigation strategies come into play. And Jonathan made some great points there as well. As you're at 37, as he mentioned, you'll get 3 points taken off when you accept a plea deal. You can get additional time taken off for substantial assistance, depending on how your narrative works, how your character reference letters go. The judge can give a downward variance from there. So what you're doing between now and your sentencing hearing is everything you can to get that number lower.
Hey, Scott, it's Carol. I'm just going to jump in here really quick.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm going to try and not share my screen.
No. I just want to say, if anyone has any healthcare related questions, I'm happy to answer those. I'm here on the other side listening, but I'd be happy to answer any healthcare related questions anyone might have at this point in their stage of their journey. So if you do,
I just need to get a list of the approved medications that the BOP allows.
Okay, who's this?
Jonathan
Okay.
Ruffey.
So John, I'm going to go ahead and email you the current formulary. What I always recommend is that people have an appointment with their primary care physician. If you take regular medications, take that formulary with you and go over it with your physician so that
That's why I'm asking for it. Yep.
Yeah, so that you can make a plan, because some of the medications are going to be either a different brand, or they're not going to have that available. So if it's something that you need to taper off of, or that you need to, take a different approach from a treatment perspective, it's good to know what the Bureau of Prisons has in their formulary. And one thing that we learned yesterday from the subject matter expert was that sometimes the Bureau of Prisons will allow non-formulary medications if it's something that's essential, but it is a process to get that approval. So he did recommend in that case, if your doctor and you determine this is something that you really need, you should take it with you and ask that it be given to the medical department so that the doctor can evaluate that. So you can, if it's something that you really need, take it with you and be prepared.
Wonderful.
Can I have that list emailed to me as well? This is Glenn Hudson, please.
Yes.
And Carol, this is Michael White. I'd like it as well.
Okay. How about if let me see. Let me just jot down. So we have John, Michael White, Glenn. Anybody else? And if you do want it, you can send me an email. It's carol@earningfreedomcorp.com. It's CAROLE, carol@earningfreedomcorp.com. If you have a healthcare question or if you want that formulary document, I'll be happy to send it to you. That's all I have, unless anyone has another question.
I have one question.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Kara. How are you?
Good. What's your question?
So, if I am young and healthy, is there anything that I need for my medical records? I would like to be able to apply for the CARES Act, but I'm young and healthy. I don't have any medical history or anything.
Yeah. So the CARES Act doesn't require a medical condition. There are certain risk factors that the CDC has documented that make someone at a higher risk for a severe outcome as a result of COVID. But the CARES Act doesn't say that you have to have those risk factors. But so you can apply for CARES under all the guidelines. Once you meet all the guidelines, if you have a health condition that the CDC recognizes as a higher risk factor for a more severe illness, I know that does carry some weight in the BOP, but it's not a deciding factor as to whether or not you qualify.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. So if I don't have any history, then I don't need to get any records or anything.
No, if you don't have a medical condition that's documented or diagnosed, then good for you. That's awesome. But you don't need to worry about any formulary information or medical records or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will we be allowed to show up when we if I self-surrender with doctor's notes?
You should bring everything that you have, all of your medical records, put them in an envelope, and go ahead.
Well, I've been a patient of my doctor's for 20 years. I can't bring all 20.
Yeah, what I would bring is the most current H&P, history and physical, that lists all of your diagnosed medical conditions, your current medications, and current treatment plans. Usually they do that once a year, or you could visit and ask them, would you do an H&P for me so that I can take it? That would be an ideal document. That's in doctor's language, and it will clearly identify to the prison doctor all of the information that they need to know.
Now, I will get that, but in the meantime, I just got a letter stating, what the conditions are and what they recommend. For instance, I can't climb up to a second bunk because of a condition I have. So she said medically necessary for a bottom bunk. Hopefully they listen to that. I don't know if they will.
We've heard from some people who surrendered that when they presented those concerns at the time that they were processed in, they were that was something that the prison staff took into consideration and were respectful of. So I would just share that when you go in, that that you have a condition that makes you unable to climb to a top bunk, and could you please have a bottom bunk, and then show them the documentation.
Hey, Carol, this is Casey Joe. Thank you for taking the time to answer these questions.
Yeah, sure.
Very nice to meet you. I have a question. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so I have a pump, and I'm obviously it's a necessity. And so kind of along the same lines,
Mhm.
Obviously insulin's is,
Essential. Yep.
So obviously bring that with me, but with respect to the pump, is that something that, to your knowledge, has been allowed, or do they require you to go to the long lasting insulin?
You know what, Casey, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. We can try to find out for you, but I would recommend that you be prepared either way. But if they don't, that you're prepared with what kind of insulin do you use? Do you use if you don't have your pump, are you using a combination of short acting and long acting?
So I kind of exclusively use the pump at this point, but it's short acting, so it's either Fiasp or Novolog.
Okay.
I do have some, and I can get some additional if I needed to take that. Some of the longer acting, I just haven't used it, and since I was diagnosed.
So I would take a look at the formulary and see what insulin they provide, that they have in stock. If they don't have your long acting Lantus or whatever treatment plan you decide on with your physician, you should do that before you go in case they do not allow you to have your pump.
Okay.
And my guess is because they're, even though it's silly, there is a needle, that they're going to be unlikely to allow you to have that because they can treat it another way. And it needs to be, that type of thing needs to be overseen by medical. So my guess is that they would probably not allow you to, but I don't know that for sure. We'll try to find out. But I would meet with your doctor now while you have time and make that plan so that you have that plan ready, because for you, that's life-threatening if you don't get your insulin. So it's going to be really important that you have that clearly documented and that they know that ahead of time, going in.
Okay, will do. Thank you. That was great advice. Thank you so much.
Hey, Carol, just a quick question. Is the formulary you're sending the same as the one that's on the Bureau of Prisons?
I'm not sure if it's the same one. I believe I have the most current one. So if it is, then, that's good. You've already found it, but I'll send you what I have.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, we do this again. We do this on Fridays and Saturdays. So if you did have more questions or you want to hear the same thing again, or did I go through all those chats, honey?
I don't know.
Let me sit down.
Okay. Nice to see everyone. And do just email me if you have questions. Carol@freedomcorp.com is Carol with an E. Bye.
Thanks, honey. Let me see if I went through all the questions. Michael, I didn't show you that can I go back to Michael? Michael, are you there?
Yes. Scott showed it.
Oh, he did. Okay, so you
Yeah.
saw the guidelines?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I appreciate
Great.
that.
And did you have an understanding of them and all that a little better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, so Michael, then I'm going to go to Joe. If I surrender November 17th, what would be my release date? Ballpark. Joe, you're kind of the same thing now as Ryan, and that your sentence is so short that I think we could just say 3 to 6 months you're going to get on this home confinement program. I think that's realistic. So we could just say, I could just pull the sheet up. Let me just do it.
No, it's okay, Michael. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I went with what you said about the other
it's going to be
individual
the
that had
same
12.
there. So that's Joseph, and then Jonathan, 48 months minimum score RDAP, surrendered in December. Oh, I did Jonathan already. I know Jonathan's very confusing. It is. And you can call me anytime. I just hope I can take the call, but call anytime. Casey to everyone. And the reason I say that is because when you get into prison, my role is building the institutional side of our venture of going into prisons, and that was the Bureau of Prisons. So I'm trying to bring more programs into the prison system that will help people earn these earned time credits. So when I see a 202 number, I know it's the BOP, and I'm developing this tool. And so there's too many people that have my phone number, so I hope that I'll take your call. Let me just go here. It would be nice to see this schedule like a Gantt chart. Hey, look at that, Carol. He's talking your language. A Gantt chart with each phase in rows, timeline and columns. Well, yeah. So Casey, just so you know, this is something we're developing. We're trying to get more data from people in different regions of the country. And we also have to wait to see how the BOP is applying these tools. We don't know that now. This is too new. So once we have that, this will evolve in the weeks and the months to come. But we will keep working at it. We'll keep sharing how we're evolving it in all the webinars. And we will also be sending it to people in prison.
Well, Michael, that's a fantastic thing, because if you research, I mean, you just can't find anything like that online. So it'll be the first of its kind, and I think extremely helpful to a lot of people.
We know how important it is to people, and you'll find that what we'll try to do all the way through your journey is to be looking at what's going on and giving you insight and data. But at the end of the day, I can give you some very simple advice. Don't get a disciplinary infraction while you're inside. Participate in FRP, the financial responsibility plan, if you've got any type of financial report, and participate in these courses, because that really moves things. But we'll give you a lot more insight as you're going, Casey. And it's nice to meet you. I don't think I've spoken to you before.
Mike, I got a question about restitution.
Okay.
So at sentencing, the judge said to do $200 a month. And if when I surrender, is that still going to be the same? I was wondering if I could negotiate it down if it's too late right now, and what can I do to maybe possibly pay it?
No, walk me through again what happened at sentencing.
So
what did the judge say?
$200 a month. My first payment is due October 1st for $200, my restitution.
Then I really recommend you pay the $200 a month.
Okay.
Okay. I don't recommend you try to lower that down. You got to find a way to do it, because you're going to want to get off of supervised release early, and you're going to want to say, I did everything the judge asked. And that's going to
thank you.
That's very important. Okay. But that's also, do you know how much it costs to live in prison, Joseph?
I think 37,000.
No, 37,000. No.
A year?
No. For you to live in there, what is it going to cost you to live in there? What do you think it's going to cost you to buy food and stuff like that?
600, 500.
Okay. If you're taking 500 to 600, you better make sure that you're paying 200. That's all. The judge is going to want to see that. Okay. That's how you show and differentiate yourself from everybody else. Michael White, could I get one as well? What is it that you want as well, Mike? It says, could I get one as well? I don't know. Oh, a release plan? That Mike, Michael White, could you unmute yourself?
Yes, there's a release plan.
Carol, could you put that release plan, Michael White? And anybody else? Actually, you know what? I'm going to send a blanket email out to everybody, and I'll just include the Word doc on that everybody's on this webinar. So you don't have to ask. I'll just send it out to everybody. Casey, to everyone. Carol, I have a few questions regarding type 1 diabetes. I think you answered that. Email me the formulary as well. Do you have the formulary like as a PDF or a link? Okay, we'll also put that on that group email when I send out the webinar link, the replay of this. Scott Carper to the formulary. Yes, you already sent that. I have to head out, so stay on my head. Okay, good webinar today. It's close. Okay, that's it for everybody. I don't have any more questions. I want you guys to have a great weekend and know that better times are ahead. And I'm going to end the recording, and we'll be here again tomorrow. You're more than welcome to join, but it'll basically be the same thing. Thank you.